Yeah, good afternoon over here. My name is Onwale Godwin. We're talking about the aggregate expenditure function in the previous class. That is the class that is leading to this particular one. So if you've not seen that class and this happens to be your first class, you might not be able to understand properly like you should have understood if you had seen the the class that precedes this particular one. But for that, I'm going to make sure that I link the link of the previous class as well as the link of the entire playlist in the description of this video, because before we got to this before we got to this place before we got here, we've been talking about national income accounting for a while now. So starting from what's GDP, nominal versus real GDP, all of that and all, and this might even be the 10th or 11th class on national income accounting. So if you want to have a very good understanding of national income accounting, especially macroeconomics in general, the link to the playlist will be left in the description of this video, so you can check from the very first class up to this particular class. And if you're not interested in all of that, the class that precedes this, I would also leave the link in the description of this particular video, so that you'll be able to, so that you won't get lost. Okay. In our previous class, we were talking about the autonomous expenditure, the autonomous aggregate expenditure. Now, the autonomous aggregate expenditure is given as this small z equals A, autonomous consumption plus investment plus government spending plus exports. How we got this, is the previous class, as I've said. So you might seem a little bit lost. And you don't have to memorize this because it all depends on the question that you have. Although this is the general thing that you have. Now, what's the MPE, which is the marginal propensity to expend, that measures the slope of direct expenditure function. We're able to obtain B minus N into bracket 1 minus T. So we're able to obtain B minus M, and we solve that out, and so you don't really have to cram that. And as I warned in that particular class, that it all depends on the function, the aggregate expenditure function that you are given. So you have to work out the slope, not memorize it. This is not like an identity or something like that. So you have to work out the slope based on the function that you are given, or based on the information that you have. Okay, so here we have the shift of the AE curve and slope of the AE curve. So when talking about the shift of the AE curve, I was saying then A is aggregate expenditure. Okay, I was saying then that it is a change in autonomous expenditure that leads to a shift of the aggregate expenditure curve. Now, what do I mean? Now, if we say that from here to here, if we say that from here to here represents the autonomous expenditure, okay, it simply means whatever the autonomous expenditure is this vertical intercept. Is this vertical intercept? So that's what we mean. All right. So now I have an example. If A, which is the autonomous consumption, not the entirety of not the entire consumption value. If A is 20 billion naira, investment is 10 billion naira, government spending is 7 billion naira, and export is 2 billion naira. Okay, so if A is 20 billion naira, I is 10 billion naira, G is 7 billion naira, and export is 2 billion naira. Find Z. Okay, Z meaning the autonomous expenditure. So from here we have A plus I plus G plus X. So what we have is Z equals A plus I plus G plus X. So Z equals A has been given to be 20 plus I is 10, G is 7, then export, not net export now. So export is 2. So summing all of that together, we have 39 billion. So let's assume that this were the curve of this function. So that means here we have 39 billion. Good. So that's the vertical intercept. Now, what if the investment increases to 13 billion naira? That's gross private domestic investment. Now recall that here it is 13, here it is 10. So now what if it increases to 13? So we now have 20 plus 13 plus 7 plus 2, and that gives us 42 billion naira. So that means we are no longer here, we are now somewhere around here, 42 billion naira. So the new line. So this is the new curve now. I could have put it there before now, but I really want you guys to understand it. Okay, and here, so AE has changed. So what made it change? C is the same. Investment made it change. So we have investment prime plus G, then plus NX. Okay, so autonomous investments increase, and that increased the entire aggregate expenditure function by the value of the change in autonomous investments. And then what if A, which is the autonomous consumption, A now is autonomous consumption, not autonomous aggregate expenditure. So notice that, so aggregate expenditure has the consumption aspect embedded in it. So what if the autonomous consumption now decreases? Okay, the arrow is pointing down, decreases to 11 billion naira in A, like in question A. In question A. Alright, so autonomous consumption there was 20. So now that has fallen to 11, so what do we have? 11 plus 10 plus 7 plus 2. This is 21, this is 28 plus 2, that's 30. So that means our vertical intercept now is no longer 39 billion, which was the first question. It is now something here. Okay, the first one is increased, it is now 30 billion. So we have this. It's a parallel line. Don't mind my diagram. So we have the same thing. So AE will be changing, but A will change because C has changed. You know, autonomous consumption is an aspect of consumption expenditure itself. Okay, so like a portion of C has changed. So we're having AE prime equals C prime plus I plus G plus NX. So in this case, there is a reduction from the initial value. So what is this trying to tell us? This is trying to tell us that whenever there is an increase in any of the components of autonomous expenditure, okay, the AE curve will increase by the exact amount of that change in autonomous expenditure. Okay, so because here our AE, okay, here because here investment increased by 3, okay, it was 10 before, it increased by 3, the entirety of the autonomous expenditure function will increase by 3, and that simply means there is an upward shift of the aggregate expenditure curve, an upward shift of the aggregate expenditure curve. Now look at it when we have a decline, when A reduced from 20 to 11, that's a 9 billion decline. So that 9 billion decline is going to represent an exact 9 billion decrease in the entire aggregate expenditure, in the entire value of the aggregate expenditure, and that is why, you know, from 39 this is reducing to 30. So there's going to be a downward shift of the aggregate expenditure function. So if any of these components should rise, okay, the aggregate expenditure function rises by the same amount. That is, AE curve shifts upward by the same amount. Now, if any of these components should reduce by a particular value, the AE curve will also reduce by that exact value, and that simply means a downward shift of the AE curve. A downward shift of the AE curve. There is no change in slope at all, because what is increasing here, what is changing here, I change, A change, you know, they are not what constitutes the MPE. I is not here, okay, and then A is not here. So you have BM1, this is 1, and then we have T. So all of these, none of what is changing here is in the MPE function, as I may call it. So, and that is why your MPE is not going to change whatsoever. So that's that about that. Now, how about a change in slope of the AE curve? What changes the slope of the AE curve? Now, MPE is given as B minus M, 1 minus T, which is what we have here in a simple form. So then, if there is a change in any of these components, the slope of the graph will change. The slope will change. So let me just wrap all of this off, because I want to depict something. Okay. Okay, let's manage it like that. So let me just let's have something like this. This is AE. We'll get to this particular curve later on. Now MP is equal to B minus M, which is MPC minus MPI, marginal propensity to consume minus marginal propensity to import into bracket 1 minus T. How did we get this? This is also from the class that is preceding this particular one. So that is we got all of this from there. Now what is, we are now assuming that B equals 0.6, MPC is 0.6. This is an assumption now. Marginal propensity to import is 0.1, tax is 0.15, and that's what about that. So we calculate the MPE. MPE is now 0.6 minus 0.1 into bracket 1 minus 0.15. 0.6 minus 0.1 is 0.5 into bracket 1 minus 0.15 is 0.85. But multiply this by this, and then you have 0.425. So now let us assume that the slope, the original slope of this curve is 0.425. 0.425. Now what is I want us to now observe something. So I'm going to be changing the values of B, and I'm going to be changing some of these values for us to check something. Now let's assume that B is still 0.6, but then the marginal propensity to import, MPI, increases to 0.2, and every other thing remains the same. Tax is not changing. Now by the time we multiply everything out, we have 0.34, which simply means the MPE has decreased. The MPE has decreased. So I'm going to let us know what this means. Okay, what this means when we say NPE has decreased, NPE has increased, how does it affect that line that we are drawing? Now, let us in this particular case, so NPE rose here. In this particular case, we have 0.6, 0.2, and nothing is changing here, but the tax rate is increasing from 0.15 to 0.2. Okay, so what is there is the same. Tax increases. So by the time you multiply it out, you have 0.4. This value is also lower than this value. Hope you are getting that. So when marginal propensity rises, marginal propensity to import rises, NPE reduces. Again, when the tax rate rises, other things being equal, the marginal propensity to expend also what reduces. This is the original value. Okay, now the next now assume that B falls, MPC falls. Okay, if in these two other examples, MPC was the same. MPC falls now, so 0.5 minus, and every other thing is the same. MPI is 0.1, then 1 minus 0.5, we have 0.4 again. So all of these values, so when there is an increase in marginal propensity to import, when there's an increase in the tax rates, and when there is a reduction in the marginal propensity to consume, other things being equal, the marginal propensity to expend would reduce in value. Okay, the value becomes lower than whatever it was before. Okay, so that is what I really want us to get. So if you were given a question that what are the things that could make the marginal propensity to expend reduce or increase, now I think there are three things that could make it to reduce when marginal propensity to import increases, other things being equal, when the tax rate increases, other things being equal, and when the MPC reduces, other things being equal. So the other side of it is when the marginal propensity to import reduces. In that case, MPE would rise. Okay, when the tax rate reduces, in that case MPE would rise, and when the marginal propensity to consume, MPC, increases, the MPE would also rise. So I hope you understand. So what do we mean by all of these values? Now that is what brings us to these two graphs. Okay, so I want us to really understand what this value means. Okay, so in this graph, look at this slope. This is what we call a steep slope. Now, so how do you understand a steep slope? Imagine you have a staircase like this, and then you have a staircase like this. So if you place the ball here and you place the ball here, which of the graph would you have the ball falling at a very fast rate? Of course, you are going to be having this particular graph. Or let me just give a bad example. Now, sorry for that. Let's assume someone was here and the person falls. Okay, and someone is here and the person falls. Which graph do you think the person is going to sustain the more injury? Okay, which graph do you think the person is going to sustain more injury? If someone should fall from here, the person is likely going to die before getting to this point. And if someone should fall from here, the person will not even get to this point at all. Maybe along the line, the person might be able to stand up. Okay, so a slope like this that can kill someone at a very fast rate is a steep slope. And a slope like this is a gentle slope. This slope is gentle. Now, with numbers, how do we now know the slope that is steep, the slope that is gentle? We have to understand this because by the time we start talking about the equilibrium national income, all of these things will come into play. Like we'll start applying all of this, and I wouldn't be going back to explaining them the way I'm already explaining them here. Okay, so that is why we need to pay a very serious attention to what is going on in this place. Okay, so now imagine is 25, aggregate expenditure is 40. You might be wondering, why is aggregate expenditure greater than income? Remember that there's a part of aggregate expenditure that's not dependent on income. So there's a possibility that A will be greater than income. And when Y increases to 50, the aggregate expenditure increases to 120. So we have, let's say the values are in billions. Now how do we calculate the slope? The slope is 120 minus 40, which is the change in the vertical axis. 120 minus 40 divided by 50 minus 25. So we have 80 over 25. This is 3.2 for that particular slope. Now this slope, this is the other one where the line is gentler than what you have here, or more gentle. So here, when the income is 5, aggregate expenditure is 20, and when income increases to 50, can you imagine? So that's a times 10 increase. Aggregate expenditure only increased 82. Only increased to 30. So by the time we calculate the change, the change in the vertical axis is 30 minus 20, which is 10, divided by 50 minus 5, which is 45. So 10 divided by 45 is 0.22. Okay, so now what does this mean? This simply means that the greater the value of the MPE, the steeper the slope. Okay, because the MPE here is of a lower value, so that's simply telling us that we have a gentle slope, and the MPE is 3 points, which is really greater than this, and that is telling us that we have a steep slope. Now, if the value were 5, 10, 15, that means you're having, a very steep slope. So that is what is happening. So a reduction in NPE means that the slope is becoming more gentle, and an increase in the NPE simply means that the slope is becoming steeper. So in all of these cases, when NP, what's changed here? When the NPI increased from 0.1 to 0.2, the slope becomes gentle. So what that means is we'll be having a gentle slope. So instead of having this kind of slope, we'll be having this kind of slope now. Look at it. This is not changing. This is not changing, okay? Because what is changing here is not. What is changing here is M. M is what is changing, and M is not part of the autonomous expenditure. It's not part of the autonomous expenditure. So this is what we have now, and AE is going to be C plus I plus G. There's no need to put prime anywhere simply because it wasn't any of them that really made it to change. Okay, so in every of these cases, so here we have 0.34. Let me call this. Okay, we have 0.3. We have 0. The first is 0.425. This is 0.34. Now 0.4 simply means, or 0.4 simply means we have something like this. Simply means we have something like this. So the slope is steeper than the slope that is 0.4. So this represents 0.34. This slope here represents 0.4, and this slope here represents 0.425. Now all of these three values are lower than these values. That is why we have the first line, the original curve, being steeper than the remaining curves. And recall that what you have on the vertical axis, the autonomous expenditure, the value of the autonomous expenditure is not going to change. So when the slope changes, when any of the components of the NPE changes, B, M, or T, there is going to be a change in the slope of the aggregate expenditure function without a change in the vertical axis at all. Okay, and when, like what we did the first time, when the autonomous expenditure changes, there will be a shift of the curve, a shift of the AE curve, but there won't be any change in the slope. That is what I really want us to understand from this class. So if you enjoyed this class, please click on the like button, make sure you share with your friends, subscribe to this channel for more of our videos. In the next class, we'll be talking about something around equilibrium income. And you can see here that y is not equal to AE. Okay, so ordinarily y is not equal to AE. By the time we get to equilibrium income, where y equals AE, and start solving out some things, the multiplier, how it's different from the simple multiplier, and all of that. So until then, thank you very much for watching once again. Please make sure you subscribe and please share this video with your friends. See you next time.